Hey, Pretty Girl Club. So today I'm going to talk about how Normani's lack of confidence is ruining her career. Not to mention the fact that black women begged Normani to make music and then they ignored her. Oh, and by the way, Kane has 3.9 million followers still on her TikTok. So Kane has more TikTok followers than Normani has streams. Let that sink in. But let's talk about how sometimes your past traumas or inferiority complexes can cause you to self sabotage. I really believe that this is what is happening with Normani because when I Googled Normani, when I looked up Normani's interviews, the first interview that popped up was an interview with her talking about racism. So she was talking about being a victim of racism in her group that she was in with Camila Cabello. And this is the first thing. I've noticed that a lot of people, they will say, like, oh, unambiguous black women need representation in Hollywood, which I agree with. But it's like, okay, if you are the unambiguous black woman who is going to go into Hollywood, if you cannot deal with trolls, racist people, crazy people, colorist people, texturist and featurist people, then why would you go to the most racist, colorist, texturist, and featurist and shallow industry in the entire world, which is Hollywood? So that's number one. If a person can't take the heat, they should not be in the kitchen. And I'm not saying that Normani should quit her career or anything, but it reminds me of Kelly Rowland and how Kelly Rowland spent all of this time doing these interviews talking about how she felt like she was second best when no one brought it up, talking about how she wished that she was Mariah Carey's skin tone when no one brought it up. And now Kelly Rowland looks unrecognizable in her new skin tone, which we're going to be talking about soon. But I've noticed that whenever an unambiguous black woman fails or whenever she sucks at something, instead of people coming to reality, which is that black women have flaws too, instead of acknowledging that and actually helping that woman, people want to blame it on isms. They'll say, oh, well, everybody else is colorist, texturist, and featurist. And it's like, guess what? The same community that complained about Normani not representing them is the same community that's following Kane. So they complained about Kane being a colorist, and they're still following her. They're paying $1,000 to take pictures with Chris Brown and still wanting to be in Natalie Nunn's club section, even though Natalie Nunn has a history of saying some horrible things. Meanwhile, women like Normani get ignored. But one of the things that I saw about Normani was that her first thing was, okay, her parents are sick and they had cancer. And that's very sad. Obviously, I don't wish ill on anyone. But her mom was actually diagnosed with cancer when she was a little kid. And she's been dealing with it on and off for decades. But Normani still went on X Factor. She was still a part of Fifth Harmony. And she did a whole tour. And of course, that's sad. But it's like, if you really just wanted to be a caregiver to your parents, that's great. But why go into a career field where you're going to be traveling and doing a lot of studio time? And if you look at people in the industry, Megan Thee Stallion's mother passed away, Kanye West. There are so many other artists out there whose parents have been sick or they have passed away. And so I'm not saying that she did anything wrong, because I guess you can do whatever you want. If you want to travel and make money so you can pay for your parents to have care, that's great. And you should do that. But I just feel like your family being sick is still, that has nothing to do with you singing and dancing. And once again, if you are not mentally strong enough to handle the demands that come with being in Hollywood, you should not be in it. Number two is lack of performances. When she was releasing music a couple of years ago, she would make excuses that she preferred to be on a larger stage so that she could have a really good show, which is fine. But when I compare Normani to Chloe Bailey or Tinashe or even Willow Smith, all of those girls, I've seen all of them on social media. I see them on social media all the time. I've seen Willow Smith playing the guitar on social media. I've seen Chloe Bailey singing on social media. I see Tinashe everywhere. Look at how fast Tinashe went to perform at Coachella. And no, Tinashe wasn't even on the main stage. She was on one of these side stages that I didn't even know that they had at Coachella. But even if you look at Normani versus Tinashe, Tinashe was also signed with RCA, which is known to be a death sentence to a lot of people's career. That's another thing. A lot of women in the black community, they make this excuse that, oh, Normani just has a bad team. She needs to fire her team. And it's like, okay, but that's still a flaw on Normani's part. That means that you suck at choosing a team. You suck at choosing promo people, publicists, marketing people, managers. That means that you are bad at that. Or when they say, oh, well, it's RCA's fault, it's her label's fault. Okay, but still, you are bad at choosing which label to go to. You suck at choosing what label to go to. Look at how Tinashe, she was also a part of RCA, and it basically killed her career. And even if you look at Tinashe's history, she used to have a bit of a victim mentality. I remember Tinashe a long time ago talking about how she felt like people didn't support her because she is mixed race. And then Tinashe got dragged. She learned her lesson. She left her label. She did independent music. And now look at Tinashe. She's doing amazing things. I love her new song, Nasty. I listen to it like every day. But I've noticed that whenever someone has a lack of accountability or a lack of introspection, or they blame everything on isms, then it causes that person to actually stagnate. And I really do feel like Normani sometimes has a lack of confidence and a lack of dedication to her career, because I rarely see Normani online doing covers. She could go on YouTube or IG Live and just cover some other songs. She can like sing some Aaliyah songs, or, do the same thing that Chloe Bailey does. If I think about Chloe Bailey, she is always practicing her vocals. Every time I hear Chloe Bailey sing, she gets better. Every time I see her dance, she gets better. So with Normani, I feel like she's a better dancer than singer. I'm not saying she can't sing, but I would compare Normani to Tinashe in the sense that they are both better dancers than singers, which is fine, but look at the difference in work ethic between Tinashe versus Normani. How does Tinashe not even have a record label and she is still making it farther? And by the way, I'm not even going to compare Tinashe's career before, because I know she came out before like Normani. But even if you think about Tinashe doing the Nasty song, she has gone and performed that everywhere, whether it's on a small stage or a big stage. She posts about it online or on her social media. I've seen her do like a behind the scenes video where she was there with like her producer, and they were talking about how she made the song, or like how they decided to put the notes together and stuff. And I just do not get that from Normani. I do not see Normani's personality really shining and coming out. In fact, I feel like Normani probably has some sort of PTSD. I feel like she probably has trauma, which leads to self-sabotage. So sometimes if you have an inferiority complex, if you're used to people criticizing you and you don't know how to build yourself up, this is why I say that a lot of women, especially Black women, you should never have this external locus of control. I believe that self-esteem really comes from within, which is why it's called self-esteem. And then when other people compliment you, it's supposed to be a compliment to the self-esteem that was already there. But if someone already has low self-esteem or no self-esteem, and they are basing their opinion of themselves completely off of what other people say, then anytime you criticize them, they will easily be crushed. They will never make it as far as their more confident counterparts. And then a lot of people will turn around and blame it on isms. And it's like, well, no. Other people were better performers than Kelly Rowland. Beyonce was better than Kelly Rowland, kind of like how Camila Cabello at the time was a better singer, or kind of like showed more personality than Normani. And I know that Camila Cabello, she actually got dragged for being racist. And let's talk about this whole racism and colorism thing, because I've noticed that especially in the Black community, this is fake outrage. The Black community actually doesn't care about colorism as much as they say they do. They just try to use the colorism talking point so that they can freely hate on whoever they want. And also, Normani's skin tone and her features and all that, that doesn't hold her back. She still has a record deal. She still has pretty privilege. She still gets to live off of her pretty privilege, which is fine. So that's proof right there that there is no ism that's holding her back. And even if you look at Normani's team, you are the boss of your team. You are responsible for telling your team what to do, what brand deals you want to get, and stuff like that. I'm sure Normani does brand deals, but I guess when I think of who does a lot of brand deals, I'm thinking of Cardi B, I'm thinking of Ice Spice, and even Sierra. If I'm not mistaken, I think Sierra is independent, or she made her own label. Sierra is another example of someone who can dance a lot, but she's not as strong of a singer, very similar to Normani. And I don't see Normani going down the same track even as like Sierra, where, maybe you just decide to be independent or do stuff on your own and then just release music. And I also feel like the hypocrisy of Black women is to blame for this as well, because even if you look at the black content creators who do a lot of coverage on celebrities, why was I the only content creator who knew about Normani's album coming out on June 14th? I was the only person that was talking about that. I didn't see Chrissy, Queen Chama, I Am Eloho. I didn't see any of the black female celebrity commentary YouTube channels talking about Normani or kind of promoting her before her album came out. Oh no, they were too busy focusing on all the light-skinned girls. They were too busy focusing on all the mixed race girls and talking shit about them and simultaneously popularizing them further. And so this is another hypocrisy I've noticed when it comes to the collective image of black women. It's this focus on who's lighter, who's brighter, who's more privileged, who's mixed, who's dating who. And there's too much of a hyper focus on what they don't have as opposed to focusing on what they do have. And I really do feel like Normani and Kelly Rowland both are kind of like a psychological jackpot, and they are both women who embody this. They were both in these girl groups, these successful girl groups, where they were not the star of the group, which is fine because you can still be a star afterwards. But then the black community said, oh yeah, we really want you. Oh, you're a great representation. And then black women ignore them, just like how they ignore anyone else who looks like them in favor of women like Ice Spice and E. Kane. So they'll ignore them. But then when a person like me calls it out, I'm colorist for making a video talking about Normani. I'm being a colorist and I'm being anti-black against my own people group for talking about Normani. I've noticed that a lot of women with inferiority complexes who are hyper competitive with other women, they have almost this perfectionist spirit where it's like, oh, my hair has to be perfect, makeup has to be perfect, dancing has to be perfect. But we all know that having this overly perfectionist spirit can hold you back because you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to have everything perfect. And so if you wait for perfection, you're literally just going to fall into the shadows. You're going to fade into the background because you're too scared of messing up, too scared of hitting a wrong note. So you don't even go after the high notes, or, you're too scared of maybe breaking the mold in terms of your music, or maybe you're too scared to not be signed with a label. I also saw where Normani did an interview talking about how she had to fund her own music. Like she had to pay out of pocket to get like a music video released or something like that. And so once again, she could be doing what somebody like Tinashe or like these other artists do, which is you're getting the brand deals, or you're performing, you're touring. You can have a monetized YouTube channel, have a monetized Vivo. You could release multiple versions of your album. You could release merch. You could do makeup online, for God's sakes. I've seen musicians, they'll come online and do makeup tutorials. They will have a YouTube channel where they will do vlogs about themselves, and then their YouTube channel is monetized. They'll take that monetization money and then they will fund their music. So even these complaints that she had about, oh, I had to fund my own music because basically my label like wasn't supporting it. And it's like, okay, so then that shows that you should go out and get some money and then create more music. I'm also thinking of Victoria Monet, who is another one of Normani's counterparts. I view Victoria Monet as more of a dancer than a singer. I love Victoria Monet. I was just watching some of her music videos yesterday. But even Victoria Monet, she is multi-talented. She is an engineer. She does like audio engineering and stuff. She does songwriting. So even when it comes to Normani, it's like, okay, where are the other talents that she can use to sustain herself in the industry? Because this is not just you're singing karaoke at a bar. This is Hollywood. You're literally being compared to, or you're kind of like competing with in terms of business and brand deals. You're dealing with the best people in the world. And so even when I think of someone like Victoria Monet is a hustler. She knows how to get her bags, whether it's on the stage or behind the scenes. And I'm not saying Normani's not doing that, because she could be. She could be writing music for other artists, or, doing some stuff to make some extra income. But if I'm an artist and I know that my label is not shit, well, what I would do is actually try to buy my way out of the label if that's possible. But if it's not possible, once again, the blame would fall back on me, because that means that I'm bad at reading my contracts. That means I didn't read shit. That means that I'm illiterate. I am not business savvy. I'm not business minded. That would mean that I'm bad at marketing. And so there's no one to blame but yourself in that case. I also feel like when it comes to Normani's branding, obviously that is her weak point. I don't think that her having the best marketing manager is going to help, because if you are the boss, if Normani's the boss and she doesn't know how to direct her team, this tells me that she potentially lacks business skills. But I feel like when it comes to music and like Hollywood and all that, We are in a time where relatability is important. I feel like authenticity is important. When I think about like Chloe Bailey, for example, I think of her, she was in some sort of TV show, so she's done acting. I like how she has the locks and stuff like Chloe and Halle. I feel like that's very relatable to women with type 4 hair. I also think about her kind of like developing her vocal skills over the course of years. Like I used to watch Chloe and Halle when I was in college. I've been watching Chloe and Halle since they were kids, actually. And there are actually quite a few artists that I used to watch before they became famous, like Money Long. I used to watch Justin Bieber on YouTube. So I feel like the reason that some artists have stands is because the stands, they can see the development of that artist over the course of years. So they can connect with their favorite musician on YouTube and stuff. They can see them on IG Live, even when it comes to the people who are not the most talented, like Cardi B. I used to watch some of Cardi B's live streams back in the day because she was funny and entertaining. So when I think about relatability and authenticity from Normani, I don't know her personality. I just feel like it's hard for her to connect with her fans because she's too scared of making a mistake, or maybe she's got PTSD from social media bullying. And if that's the case, you should not be in the spotlight. You should be in the therapist's office, because there are some people who can handle a lot of bullying and a lot of pushback and a lot of, people trying to put them down. And then there are others who can't, and that's okay. Not everybody's cut out to be on a huge platform. Not everybody's cut out to have people kind of invading their privacy and stuff. So I understand that. But I just feel like blaming all of this on colorism, texturism, featureism, or even being dumb enough to blame her failures on a YouTube channel like mine, or saying that I'm somehow being racist by calling this out, that's idiotic to me, and that's not helpful. I just feel like sometimes Normani tries to come off like she's unbothered, or like she doesn't need to post on social media and stuff, but I just feel like that's not going to work for her. I actually feel like the age of doing that is coming to an end, because even when it came to Beyonce, Beyonce has a history of being very aloof and kind of not interacting with her fans. And I have my own kind of conspiracies on why that is. But I feel like copycatting Beyonce is not going to help Normani succeed. I think that you can take inspiration from other artists, but when it comes to marketing and branding, I really feel like the way that you market yourself is like a fingerprint. So every person has a different personality. They have different strengths and weaknesses. So Normani, she doesn't have the same strengths and weaknesses as Beyonce. Normani doesn't have the same vocal strength as Beyonce. She doesn't have the same longevity or history. And so trying to simply copycat whatever you see other people doing, and especially if it's kind of a bad copycatted version, that's not going to help you to market yourself. And I guess when I compare Normani to Victoria Monet, when I think about Victoria Monet, I'm just getting more of an entrepreneurial spirit from Victoria. I just feel like she has so many other skills behind the scenes, to the point where if Victoria Monet stopped singing tomorrow, I feel like she would still have a solid career as some sort of behind the scenes person. So I'm starting to wonder if Normani lacks the skill set, or lacks the soft skills, and lacks kind of the privilege stacking. I talk about this on this channel. Privilege stacking, which is really building the soft skills, or building kind of like plan Bs and backup things that you can fall back on to kind of support you. Sometimes I'm wondering if Normani has the soft skills. Like when I think of her, I'm just thinking of dancing. I'm thinking of her being a good dancer. Maybe she could be a great background vocalist or a great pop star, but all I'm thinking about is dancing and a little bit of singing. But then when I think of somebody like Victoria Monet, I'm thinking of a songwriter, I'm thinking of an audio engineer, I'm thinking of a dancer, I'm thinking of someone that can do some riffs and runs and stuff like that. I just feel like Victoria Monet is more of a creator. And so sometimes I feel like Normani lacks creativity because she's too busy trying to fit into whatever she thinks she needs to fit into. And this is a reflection of a lot of women who have inferiority complexes. Instead of being their authentic selves and saying, fuck what everybody thinks, I can stand out as much as I want, I can do whatever I want. Instead of doing that, they try to be a carbon copy of someone else, or they try to fit in like someone else. Maybe they want to look like someone else, and then they complain later on about how people treat me inferior to so-and-so other person. And it's like, well, that person is getting special treatment for different reasons. They're getting special treatment because they have qualities that you lack. Victoria Monet is comparable to Normani in my opinion, but I really do feel like Victoria Monet, she has a lot of qualities and a lot of other skills that Normani doesn't seem to have. But what do you ladies think? Do you think it's colorism, texturism, and featureism that is holding Normani back? Or do you think that Normani simply does not have as many skills as some of these other artists? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.